Hey, good morning. Welcome back to Okladoma. And as always, thanks for tuning in. So, it's a pretty decent day, Sunday here, and the wind is blowing, but not real hard, and it's straight out the north, which is going towards the target back there, right there. And I thought I'd go ahead and do a video. I've had several comments from people asking me to do a follow up on the backstop that I made for shooting at my 3D target. And they want to actually see the arrows penetrating that back wall that I made out of horse mats to see what they're dealing with before they spend the money to do something like that. I got my trusty work cart that I built out of a dilapidated old grill. If you haven't seen that video, go watch that and see what you think about it. I got several tools and stuff laid out here. I'll tell you about this guy in just a little bit, but for now I'm going to flip the camera around, walk you through my setup just so you can compare what you're shooting with what I shoot, and then I'll start drawing and shooting, and we'll see what it looks like. I'll set up the camera down there in a little bit and actually show the arrows penetrating the target and the backstop on it so that you can get an idea of what my setup does on this particular 3D target and on the horse mats themselves. Without any further ado, let's rock and roll. Okay, so to start off with, I shoot a Bear Attitude. It's not an expensive bow by any means. My son and my wife went in together and got me that. I'm shooting a Trophy Ridge sight that my son gave me because he thought my other one was too cheesy. And it's one of those sights that you can actually, just tighten it and loosen it by hand as opposed to using Allen wrenches and stuff. Mine was pretty old school. It's not a fancy setup. And I'm going to be honest, guys, I think people, especially guys when they're first starting out, they get hung up and they think that they've got to spend a bunch of money. And, I've killed several deer with this, and I killed this one this year. That's a nice one. It doesn't take a super expensive bow. They've all pretty well got, the later technology. This bow, I think, came out, if I'm not mistaken, in 2015, and I'm still hunting with it. So I'm not a guy that changes bows very often, although I think for next season I'm going to change up a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and get another Bear, but I'll probably get a later model and just see what happens. And I always get the Ready to Hunt, because especially if you get the Bear, and if you guys, any of you guys, if you watch the Hunting Public, they always sponsor a bow, and it's got decent gear on it. It's no big deal. I'm just not going to go out and spend, $1,800 for a bow. If I was hunting a big lease where I saw quality deer all the time, I might up my game a little bit, but I hunt right back there. I've got 11 acres here at Okladoma. And believe it or not, we have some pretty good bucks come through. And I always take off the first 2 weeks of November. I don't even go in the woods until Halloween. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that later too. So I shot, let me show you this real quick, because this matters for you guys that are just starting out. So I haven't even touched this bow since season went out, actually since the second week of November. And I pulled it out a while ago and got myself set at 20 yards. Look how high my first shot was. My second one drilled it, but my first shot, I still had the quiver on. And you need to make up your mind early on in your hunting game if you want to hunt with your quiver attached or unattached, because it can make a difference. And I find that for myself, the quiver I've got on here, it's probably my fault, but it doesn't fit real tight, and it vibrates and makes a little bit of a rattle too when I release, and stuff like that matters. So I take mine off. Anyway, the release I use, it's called, I don't know if you can see it, but it's called a Lockjaw 2000. It's a single tooth release that my brother gave me because he thought my other one was too cheesy. And I love this release. I don't even think you can get them anymore. If you don't have a rangefinder, you need one. Probably one of the most important tools you'll use as an archery hunter. So with that being said, oh, I also dug out of my practice arrow stash. I've got one here that's a 340, one that's a 400, and I prefer to shoot a 500 spine personally. They're super rigid, and these are gold tips that my brother gave me. These right here are just different brands of arrows that I bought along the way. And you know, a lot of the arrow manufacturers make quality products. I don't know what you prefer to use. You can watch a million videos on the best arrow, but I just prefer to get 6 that match. Try to buy pretty decent arrows. I try to spend less than $100 on a 6-pack, and I cut them to length and fletch them myself, put the nocks on myself, and then I'm ready to start slinging them. Once you get those arrows and get them home and get started shooting them and just get used to how they shoot and adjust your bow accordingly to where all 6 of them are hitting, you know, close to the bullseye, you're ready to hunt, in my opinion. I mean, I'm not going to go out there and spend a fortune just to do this. And so far, I've been, you know, pretty fortunate. So I'm going to flip this thing around and get ready, set up. We're going to take a few shots and see what this looks like. All right, got my release on, bow in hand, arrow nock. Got a spot set out at 20 yards with my rangefinder. We'll punch a couple of arrows right into the target, and I'll show you how they penetrate, and then I'll tell you a little bit about the target itself, because I'm all about trying to help guys save all the money you can. Let's go. Got to take my glasses off. That's another thing too. I'd like you guys to comment and tell me if there's a style of glasses that you can buy that you can actually shoot with archery. Other than that, I'm going to have to get contacts, because I just can't find a pair of glasses that don't really screw with me and mess my shots up. All right, here we go. That's left. Not great. Like I say, I haven't even touched this thing. Let's flip the camera around and go look at him. That's not good. I'm still feeling it. I had shoulder surgery on the 19th of November on my right side. I can still feel that a little bit. I was actually aiming like just a little bit above that heart line, because that's pretty low. I was aiming somewhere right along that top edge. But the arrows on this particular target, they penetrate, but not much. And this is actually a pretty narrow target width-wise. I'll leave a link in the description of the kind I buy. This is the second one I bought like this. I've got the target itself hanging with just a fixture jack, or not jack chain, but fixture chain, like you'd hang a chandelier with. And I've got eye bolts that I took and put construction adhesive on the threads before I screwed them into the head, and then I stopped right where the bottom of the ring is. It takes a lot of abuse. It moves a little bit, but that's not bad. We've had some 80-mile-an-hour winds since I hung this last September, and this thing handled it just fine. I still haven't put the tin over the roof yet just because I've had other things going on, but you're going to get about 6 or 8 inches of penetration through that. And now I'm going to shoot a couple of shots actually missing the target completely, just so you guys can see what it looks like and how difficult or easy it is to actually pull the arrows out once you're done. All right. All right, I'm set back up again. We're going to purposely miss the 3D target and shoot just into the mat itself. All right. Let's walk down and see what we got now. Keep in mind, get where you can see good. This is at 20 yards, and I shoot 70-pound draw. That bow is supposed to shoot 305, but I think when I had it checked, I was shooting about 265 or 270. It's not super fast. And it penetrates a little further than the 3D target itself, but that's it. No more chasing arrows. Now what I do to make this easier to get the arrows out, I screw the practice heads off, because the style of heads that I use, let me show you. If I can get it to focus in. That's the style of practice head I use. And you see how this shank right here is smaller than the practice tip itself. So this edge right here sticks out even a little bit bigger than the arrow shaft, because I shoot these little bitty thin arrows, and that seems to get hung occasionally trying to pull it out. So I'm going to pull these off. Then I'm going to have to set the camera on my tripod real fast, and I'll show you how difficult or easy that it is to actually pull them out of the mat. Okay, just to recap, of course, I pulled the practice tips off. I get a hold of the shaft, put my knee against the horse mat itself. And that. They're pretty hard to pull out, but they do pull out. And that's pretty much it. I hope that you guys are interested enough that you'll think about doing this yourself, because I've lost a lot of arrows out there in the back, missing the target and going out through the fence, and you got to go out there and dig through the grass and try to find them. It's not conducive to a fun time, I'll tell you that. And now, that's pretty much it on this. I mean, I don't know what else I could show you other than the build itself, and you can watch my first video to see how I did this. And now I'm going to tell you a little bit about the big boy that I killed, and maybe even show you where, because you're going to be surprised just how close that deer was to the house this last season. I'll be with you in just a minute. Where my property here is located, I'm in northeastern Oklahoma, and I live a few miles outside of Claremore, the birthplace of Will Rogers. That's an It's argumentative, and it's some people say he was born in Oolagaw, some people Claremore, but for whatever reason, Claremore has the moniker birthplace of Will Rogers, and it's in green country. You can look around my place right now. The leaves haven't come out yet, but it's beautiful here, and I've got a small acreage. I've got 11 acres, and when I first moved here, part of what caught my eye and made me want to get this place was the property itself. My property is only 330 feet wide, but it's almost 1,400 feet back. No, I'm telling you wrong. Yeah, something like that. Anyway, uh, there's a huge creek back there that separates the back 3.5 acres from the rest of the property, and I leave that across the creek for my son to hunt. He didn't hunt this year, and I've seen some quality deer back there, but I always had a feeling that I was missing the game a little bit because I was seeing a lot of sign on this side of the creek, even though it's closer to the houses. And this deer right here came out, and I want to say it was the 12th of November, and I'd been sitting on the stand all morning, and I put out the other, I told you earlier in the video that I had got, that was my second target that I put on here. The original one is all full of holes and everything, but I spray painted it brown and kept the horns on it and everything, and I use it as a decoy, and it works. So I had my decoy set up on my stand, and I was rattling that morning. And I've never really had just a whole lot of luck, but this year I rattled in 2 bucks, this one and 3 bucks actually. One earlier in the morning from when I shot him, and one earlier in the week on the other side of the creek. And this guy, I had rattled that first buck in, wasn't anything I wanted to shoot at. It was a nice buck, but I was really trying to hold out for possibility of getting something bigger. And I rattled one more time about 10 minutes till 9. And I made my mind up that if I didn't see anything by 9:30, I was going to get down and come back to the house and get some coffee and stuff. And I was off on vacation. I was scheduled to have shoulder surgery on November the 19th on this side, my draw arm. And I talked my surgeon into letting me take off so that I could hunt. And he was like, "Can you even draw a bow?" And I was like, "Yeah, I can draw. It hurts." And he said, "Well, knock yourself out, but we need to get that took care of on the 19th. And I said, "Okay." So the 12th, just a few days ahead of my surgery, here I am on the stand. And I didn't see anything. Got to 9 o'clock and still nothing. Like it had slowed down for the morning. Maybe they went to bed or something. And about 20 minutes after 9, I stood up on my stand and turned around facing the tree and was putting my stuff in my backpack. I had already taken my arrow off my bow and put it back in the quiver, and the quiver was still hanging there. And as I was putting my rangefinder and my binoculars and stuff in the bag, I saw something out of the corner of my eye and looked over, and I was like, "Dear God in heaven, man." And he was coming right to me, and I'm going to take you back there in a minute and just show you where this is at, because I want you guys to know you don't have to have a lot of property. You just have to hunt real smart. Anyway, he came up and was eyeing my decoy, and he stopped and started just thrashing this river birch tree. And he he was kind of snorting a little bit and kept looking at the decoy, and then he clawed the ground. I don't think they're really making a scrape when they do that. I think they're more or less doing like a bull and just trying to show their prowess. And he started coming towards the decoy, and to do that, he had to walk by right in front of my tree. And of course, I've got the shakes a little bit, and I'm just like, oh my God. So I'm sitting here trying to get an arrow off my quiver, get it in my bow, get my bow off the hanger, and then I had to turn completely like this to get a shot. And by that time, he was like 12 yards away, and he was walking sideways, and his hair was all standing up. And when he got to 10 yards, I shot, and he just kind of made a couple of jumps and went off in the brush. And then he started walking off across the trail in front of me and over towards my neighbor's property, and I just collapsed onto my deer stand and was just like taking deep breaths and stuff because I had to be so quiet during that whole incident and everything. But anyway, it was a hunt of a lifetime. And when I finally found him and everything, he's got this real interesting, like the start of a drop tine. It looks like a paddle. But this guy scored 156 and 6/8 green score. And I haven't got him mounted yet, but I'm going to. And I'm waiting sometime this month, hopefully, I'm going to get in. There's a guy that lives at Claremore that officially scores deer, and I'm going to have him officially scored. I know for a fact that he's Pope and Young. I can get in there if I want, but I just like to know what he really scored just because he's so big. I mean, that's a big old deer, and I'll probably never kill anything that size again. Most of the deer I have taken on this place are around 120 inches. And my son, not this last season that just went by, but the season before that, he killed one that was over 125 inches. So that if it didn't shrink down too much during the drying period and he got it measured, it might make Pope and Young. But anyway, don't be afraid of small properties. You just have to hunt them smart. I never hunt this stand unless the wind is right. I don't hunt any of my stands unless the wind is right, because no matter what you do, you're not going to outsmart a deer, and you're not going to fool their nose. I wash my clothes in unscented soap. I let them line dry, and then in my hunting closet in my man cave, I've got an ozonator, and I burn those things with ozone an hour before I take off to the woods every time I go hunt, and it works for me. So here's the creek that I was telling you about, and the rest of my property is all back in that area. There should be close to 4 acres back there. And my thoughts are that buck worked his way down across the creek and made his way up this trail towards my stand, and he was working his way to try to get downwind. And that's why I tell you that you have to hunt smart. You have to plan on and play the wind religiously. Took me years to get that through my head, especially for you young guys. If you'll learn that early on, you'll be killing bigger bucks sooner than it took me to be able to do that. That buck came up, popped out right here, saw my decoy, and my stand is right there in this tree. So he works his way like this, looking at my decoy. He stopped right here and thrashed that tree. I thought that was a river birch, but it's not. Then he hopped over this berm, hopped over this log, and started working his way right to me. and I'm right there. He got right here. He started working himself around and staying right on the edge of this break. And I shot him right here, 10 yards. And there's my house. And funny enough, while I was sitting there after I shot him, I ranged my house from the stand, and it's 147 yards behind my house where I shot that deer. Anyway, I found that interesting, and I hope you do too. But anyway, that's going to be a wrap. I don't want to just drone on like an old man. I mean, I'm 60 years old, so I'm naturally going to tell stories and talk a lot. But if you tuned in for the first time, I hope you'll go watch some of my other videos. If you love hunting, if you drink bourbon or whiskey occasionally, if you dip, if you puff a cigar, if you like old trucks, four-wheel drives, old hot rod cars, old hot rod and gas signs and stuff like that, you're at the right place for sure. Anyway, I hope you guys have a good year. I hope you guys kill a monster this coming season. And I hope you'll take the time to build one of those 3D target supports and a backdrop, the backstop for those, and get out there and shoot, because that takes away all your worry. You won't be chasing arrows anymore. That's going to wrap it up for today. For Okladoma, this is Shaw. I love you guys, and keep your eyes open for the next one. I'm sorry it's taken me a while to get back on board, but with everything that happened this year to me late in the year, I haven't had an opportunity to make any more videos. I'm just now back in the gym and feeling pretty good again on my arm. Anyway, have a good one. We'll see you.